For the last few months, I've been using the S9C as my daily driver DAC amp actually. And honestly, it's kind of felt like my dirty little secret. I see almost nobody talking about it, and I think it's one of the best values in all of audio. Aune itself is a brand that tends to not do a whole lot of new releases. They don't tend to come out with a ton of different products. Compare that to another brand like Topping, which is coming out with new stuff all the time. Aune has always focused on things that seem to work well, but they're also usually not the first name out of people's mouths. And that's unfortunate because when they do come out with a really good product like this, or their new headphone, the AR5000, they're really excellent products. Now, this is a relatively simple device, but it works really well, which is kind of my favorite type of device. So the features on this are pretty minimal. It's got XLR and 4.4 millimeter, and of course an unbalanced 1/4 inch output. It has a series of digital inputs, but no analog inputs, and lineouts out the back, which are volume controlled on a separate volume level than that of the headphone outputs. Every function you can do on this is available on this nice aluminum remote. Also, a quick note on the logo. I never noticed this until having this remote, but you can actually flip it completely upside down and it's the exact same logo back and forth. It's kind of cool. Now, the balance amplifier in this is a 5-watt amplifier. It also has dual 32-bit DAC chips. They are the ESS 9068 DAC chips. And the quality of materials, not only externally, but internally, are quite high end actually. They have a really nice 50-watt transformer in here. It gives it this nice, really quite hefty feeling. It feels like a solid piece of equipment. Not only the heft of it, but the actual interface, the anodizing, everything about this feels quite a bit more premium than a brand like Topping actually. I think some users are gonna want more features here. This has a mode switch between 2 modes, but they're pretty similar in terms of sound, not drastically different. Some people will have different needs than what this offers. For example, analog inputs would be very useful to some people. Also, things like slight EQ adjustments would be nice to have, but this doesn't have it. Honestly, the rest of this build is such a good value that I have a hard time really seeing those as big complaints that are worth like docking it for. Like, it's already a pretty good value as it is. So not having those extra features doesn't go against it. The one thing I would change about it, and the one thing that is a bit of a downside, is the screen. It's not very bright, and there's only this black mode with white text. I would love to see a menu option where you can get white background with black text because it would actually show up a little bit better, but it's actually a little bit darker than I think most people, including myself, would want. And it does make it look a little bit less than super premium. I feel like if they had a bright, vibrant screen, this would actually feel very, very premium. Especially with this kind of trapezoidal shape with the curved top. I think this thing looks really premium except for the screen. I think the screen would just bump it up. An extra $25, something like that, would be totally worth paying for a better screen. Some people do this, I've done this in the past, but some people turn their amp sideways because of the angle of the sidewall. It's actually gonna be at a bit of a tilt. It's not gonna be straight. So just keep that in mind if you do plan to put this somewhere vertically. This may look straight up, but it's actually sort of a trapezoid shape. Now for sound quality, if you've been following the channel, you've known that I used to run an A70 Pro and a D70 Pro from Topping. It was a stack. That stack, if you wanted to buy it, would run you a little over $1,000. Now that is a wonderful stack. I really couldn't ask for much more, but I really wanted an all-in-one, and I felt like for sound quality, this was that thing's equivalent, which again goes into the value proposition that this offers. For headphones, I've been running basically everything that has come in here. I've reviewed basically every headphone partially on this. I've compared every amplifier to this. And headphones recently that I just did some final testing with were the new Diana DZ, and of course the Empyrean 2. One is an inefficient planar, one is an efficient planar, but I've tried IEMs, dynamic driver headphones, stuff like that. One thing I will say is I kind of wish that Aune had a higher end headphone for me to test their kind of ultimate version of sound quality. I would really like to know what Aune's perfect vision is. As of right now, they have the AR5000, which is a great $300 headphone, but I'd love to see something like super high end from them come out just to see what they could really do. I'm sorry for the stupid verbiage here, but I feel like the sound quality here is just pure hi-fi. It is what I would expect from a high-end amplifier. The sound quality is not something that I would associate with a value amplifier. And this is not a cheap device, to be fair, but it's also not a super high-end device, but it sounds a lot like a super high-end device does to me. When it comes to things like tonality, this is extremely neutral. Now, neutrality doesn't have to mean devoid of any level of, let's say, color with it. In fact, when starting from a neutral position, I feel like colors pop more. That's one of the reasons why visually I like a clean visual slate. I use a lot of whites, grays, and blacks. And that way, when I do utilize color, it pops a little bit more than it would if everything was just all color, if that makes any sense. And audio is kind of the same way. When you have a neutral starting point for its tonality, things that do have a lot of color or things that do sound super clean sound very clean or very colored. So super neutral neutrality, this is dead on what I would consider neutral for an amplifier, but it's also colorful, it's rich, it's vibrant, it feels very engaging for things like vocal tonality, instrument like woods and stuff sound like woods, metallics really sound like metallics. All those things shine and shimmer or kind of echo and create a presence and a vibration that is what I would associate with a high-end amplifier. Now, I still think that power does have a bit to play in terms of sound quality. I think there is specifically something with the sense of ease that you get from the sound, but also the sense of power and the depth of the bass that I typically only associate with really powerful amplifiers. So when it comes to driving planar bass like this, both difficult bass and easy bass, it can do both, and it sounds really pleasing and engaging doing both. So I really like the implementation of the power here. When it comes to, for example, things like topping DX7s, other all-in-ones that I've tried, even some stacks that are around the same price, I feel like this just does bass a little bit more kind of high-end than those do. Now, when I'm saying high-end, the characteristic that I'm looking for isn't quantity. It's a hard to describe sound of the bass having not just texture, but also depth. You feel like you can reach through layers of the bass and grab certain sections and just hold on to those and focus on those. You're also paying attention to the initial slam and how well things like the mid bass and the mids pop through and cut through that bass. Do they seem like separate entities or do they seem connected? Does it seem like the bass is on a different layer? Does it seem like it's happening in the same place in the soundstage, or does it feel like it's more layered? I'm listening for all of those things. And on a revealing headphone like the DZ, those limitations on a bad amplifier become very obvious. But when it's on a good amplifier that can really display those abilities of the headphone, that's when I know that the amp is very, very good, like this one is. Now, when it comes to the speed and accuracy of things like treble response, this keeps up the best of them. I really can't ask for much more. When it comes to mid-range tonality or forwardness or the separation of instruments and stuff like that, this is just really good solid state behavior. It's super precise, it's super clean, everything feels like it has an exact location. If you like solid state sound, this is gonna be right up with what you would expect. If you dislike solid state sound and prefer tubes or a really dark sound signature, then this is probably not gonna be your cup of tea. So yeah, for sound, this has been an excellent, excellent reference point for me for a while now. So I wanna make sure it gets credit for that. Now, in terms of comparisons, this is where things get difficult. Some of the stacks are very good values that are even cheaper than this. For example, the Modius and Magnius stack is pretty good for the price of that. I think this is better. I would rather pay for having an all-in-one. I think the sound quality is also a little bit better, but that's not a bad stack at all. And you save a couple $100 in the process. Topping has some similarly priced products like the DX7, which is a really good all-in-one as well, but this is a lot more powerful. Again, better sound too, in my opinion, and definitely better build. Though one of the benefits of the topping is it's quite a bit smaller than this. It makes it feel less premium, but you can't put it in more places. Not everybody wants something this size. Topping does also have a DX9, which I have not yet tried, and that seems like a really incredible amplifier and all-in-one, but it's almost literally double the price tag of this. So they're not exactly on the same playing field. There is also a pretty similar all-in-one, the Schiit Jotenheim with a DAC module included. You will actually save a little bit of money with going with that, but you won't have as many input options. I think it only has USB. It's got about the same amount of power, and I haven't heard the latest generation personally, so I can't vouch for its sound quality. So I don't know if it would or wouldn't be worth it, but it's worth considering. Both have similar outputs of about 6 watts into 32 ohms that are more than powerful for basically everything. I also think things like the screen and Bluetooth and the physical build of this is going to be deciding factors between this and the Jotunheim, but I'd still love to review the Jotunheim. So Schiit, if you want to hit me up, I'd love to review it. So as far as an all-in-one, I think that this thing absolutely nails it for the price category. It has the right specifications, it has the right features, it has the right build quality, and the right sound quality. So yeah, my personal perfect system right now consists of the DA7 II amplifier and the S9C Pro solid state amplifier. These things are both amazing. And I'm really, really, really enjoying this as an all-in-one. It's great.